But David Codrea is there. He put up his skis. David, how are you?
James, hi. Nice to be here again.
You look good on that downhill.
Actually, someday offline, I'll tell you about my skiing adventures.
Yes,
They weren't pretty.
I knew that you were doing that. That's why you left Southern California. But now, on a more serious subject, I know I've been reading your blog, and folks, if you're not reading David's blog, you're making a mistake, because David is the most current blog writer we know who's keeping up with your Second Amendments. And today we're going to talk about some open carry issues. David, fill us in.
Well, there's a couple different things that are going on. The story that I covered today, James, was a very disturbing story because it revolved around the comments made by an East Palo Alto police detective concerning the open carriers in the Bay Area in Northern California. And the reason it's so concerning for a couple different reasons, he was making comments to the effect that they would prone them down on the ground with their AR rifles, and if they so much as made a move, they would get what he called 2 weeks off with exclamation points, meaning that's the penalty that he's joking about for killing a citizen who is not breaking any laws. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable coming from someone in law enforcement at all, let alone someone who has risen to the rank of detective. He further went on to ridicule the open carriers and telling the people, well, you know what, go attend one of their meetings and then you can laugh at them because they can only dream about getting a CCW. And that is exactly the dilemma that these people in California are faced with. We talked before, red state, red counties, blue counties, and how California has some areas that are kind of like flyover country and other areas that are urban. And in most of these, you cannot get a CCW permit literally to save your life, because unless you're somehow connected or a celebrity or a member of law enforcement or something like that, they have what they call may issue as opposed to shall issue. And they'll just come back and say, well, we don't think you have good cause. So the only option most of the people in California, particularly in the urban areas, have is to carry openly. And to further comply with California law, they have to carry openly and unloaded.
Correct.
Okay, which is what part of the open carry movement is trying to educate people on. Now, I know there are moves in California to reform the CCW process. I'd like to see them do kind of like what Arizona is suggesting that they do, and of course, in Arizona, open carry is legal. They have shall issue CCW, and now they're entertaining the idea, and they've introduced a bill to eliminate the requirement to have a CCW permit altogether, and just go with the fact that, you know what, if you're a peaceable citizen and you're not otherwise prohibited, any laws that we have aren't going to be stopping the bad guys from carrying anyway. And so that's an experiment that we're kind of watching closely and seeing where they're going to go with that. But that, in a nutshell, to get back to the Bay Area, is what's happening with the open carry. And it just got gun owners outraged that anyone would have this little regard for our rights and whether the person was joking about it or not is unacceptable. That is the kind of thing that I, as a gun owner who am being denied my rights unless I risk breaking the law, and when I see this kind of an attitude and this kind of callous disregard for the people who all law enforcement officers have sworn an oath to the Constitution, and they are supposed to be serving the Constitution, they are supposed to be serving their communities, and to have that kind of contempt to where you're laughing at people for trying to exercise their rights, unacceptable. And I think gun owners need to make that message heard loud and clear. And
you're doing a good job of that, David, because I have read your blog. I totally agree with you. I'm quite sure, I'd almost bet money on this, that he was brought in and probably spoken to about those comments. Now, I know for a fact that law enforcement goes through a lot of training on how to deal with the public. And they deal with the public in some of the most polite mannerisms that even is beyond what I was used to, where they treat people much more nicely now than they ever have 10 years ago. So for an officer like that to make those kinds of remarks and certainly go on record with those kinds of remarks, I would almost guarantee you that there was an administrative call on the carpet with, and you're right, he's a detective. It's way beyond, he should be much more delicate on how he handles things like that. He may not agree with it, and I think law enforcement does have an issue with open carry. He may not agree with it, but to express himself in a manner like that is, I think, disrespectful to law enforcement as well as the citizens wherever you happen to live, and certainly in California. The open carry issue is here. We're going to have to deal with it. We're going to have to look at it. We're going to have to point out some of the positive sides, which quite simply are that open carry person may well be in the right place at the right time to save your life. So there's a lot of positive sides to open carry. Now we can get into the training issue. We can get into all sorts of things after that. But nonetheless, I thoroughly agree with you that the way he handled himself on that is extremely disrespectful to the citizens and to other law enforcement officials. I'm quite sure, David, that if we polled law enforcement people, they would even say, and may not want to go on record as saying so, but they would even say that you should never make statements like that on the record. If you feel that way, then that's something that you do outside of the community, not inside the community, certainly where anybody could be listening to it. So it is very disrespectful.